On a quiet Friday evening in the suburban neighborhood of Fallwood Ridge, Daniel Reyes thought it was just another routine day. But when two men, claiming to be HOA enforcers, show up at his door without proper identification, things quickly spiral out of control. What followed would change everything: a broken arm, an unprovoked assault, and a community's trust shattered. But Daniel, a former military intelligence officer, wasn't going to let this go. This is the story of how one man stood up, fought back, and sparked a movement that would forever alter his neighborhood. On a calm Friday evening, Daniel Reyes had just finished mowing his lawn when something unusual happened. The quiet of Fallwood Ridge was broken by the rumble of a white Ford Explorer, its windows darkened, slowly rolling up his driveway. Daniel had lived in this neighborhood for years, and while the occasional delivery truck or neighbor's car was expected, the Explorer looked out of place. It was an unfamiliar vehicle with no license plates. The two men who stepped out of the car only added to the mystery. They wore navy polos with a community compliance badge on their chests, but Daniel had never seen them before. The men were not from the local HOA. That much was clear. HOA enforcers were typically polite, if not somewhat rigid. But these two carried an air of menace. They didn't introduce themselves, and they didn't show any documentation. They simply walked up to Daniel's porch and began listing supposed violations. Minor things like a child's tricycle left on the sidewalk and a sandbox that was too close to the edge of the driveway. Daniel didn't know what to make of it at first. He had always been meticulous about following neighborhood rules, but something about their presence felt wrong. As he processed what they were saying, Elena, his wife, stepped out of the house holding their baby, Benji, in her arms. She listened calmly, but her eyebrows furrowed. She'd never been one to accept things at face value, and when she asked the men for identification, their demeanor shifted. Carl, one of the men, snapped and grabbed her wrist with surprising force. Elena cried out in pain as a sickening crack echoed in the air. Her arm was broken instantly. The pain was unimaginable. But it wasn't just the physical injury that stunned Daniel. It was the cold indifference of the men as they left her writhing in agony on the porch. Benji, still in Elena's arms, began crying. The two men didn't even stop to check on her. They simply walked back to their car and drove away as if nothing had happened. Neighbors had seen the entire incident unfold from their windows, but no one moved to help. No one spoke up. The police arrived nearly an hour later. Daniel watched in disbelief as the officers dismissed the situation, saying it was likely just a civil HOA matter, as if a broken arm and the unlawful entry into his home were nothing more than a trivial misunderstanding. But Daniel wasn't the type to back down. He might have been a calm, reserved man by nature, but years of military service had taught him how to handle a situation like this. He wouldn't let it go. That night, he pored over the footage from the doorbell camera. He replayed the video again and again, taking note of every detail: the uniforms, the timing, the car's license plate number. He compiled the information into a clear timeline, and then he posted everything to the local community Facebook group. It wasn't just a personal issue anymore. He wasn't the only one. Several neighbors replied within minutes. They too had been approached by these same men, threatened and intimidated over petty HOA violations. Daniel knew he couldn't stop at just sharing the post. He had to do more. He mapped the movements of the men. Using the information shared by others, he traced their every step, piecing together a pattern. What appeared to be random occurrences of coercion and intimidation was, in reality, a systematic effort to control the neighborhood. And now, Daniel knew he had to act. 3 nights later, Daniel spotted the same Explorer creeping down the street again. This time, it parked across from his house. He was ready. As the two men approached the Reyes home once again, Daniel stood by the front door, armed, but with a calm control only a trained mind could muster. He waited. His AR-10 was legally owned, unloaded, and more a symbol of authority than a weapon in that moment. His presence was enough. He wasn't going to let them cross the line again. The men moved toward the door without knocking, without permission, as if they were the rightful owners of the property. That was when Daniel stepped forward. He revealed the rifle, aimed it down toward the ground, and calmly ordered the men to stop. The tension in the air was palpable. Elena, recovering from her surgery, had been listening from the hallway, and she began recording the confrontation on her phone. Carl twitched toward his waist as if reaching for something, and before Daniel could process the move, he fired a warning shot into the dirt just inches from Carl's foot. The sound echoed through the night, sharp and sudden. Both men froze. They dropped the zip ties, fake badges, and a canister of pepper spray. The illusion of authority crumbled in that instant. They were nothing more than imposters, criminals trying to bully and intimidate residents for a rogue HOA chairman. Daniel uploaded the uncut footage to YouTube under a new channel he called One Line You Don't Cross. Within hours, the video had gone viral. News stations picked it up, and the public outrage was swift. People across the country rallied behind the Reyes family. It wasn't just about the assault on Elena, it was about what it represented. A loss of control, a loss of power, a community at risk. Carl Dunn and Peter Mills, the two imposters, were arrested and charged with assault, unlawful entry, and impersonation. Their pasts were revealed, and it became clear that they had been hired by a corrupt HOA chairman, Douglas Price, who had been pocketing funds and using ex-cons to enforce fake violations for years. Price was arrested as well, and an audit of the HOA was initiated. Several board members resigned, and the community began to heal. But for Daniel, the victory wasn't about the arrest or the public recognition. It was about standing up, about refusing to stay silent when others had let fear dictate their actions. He had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, he had sparked a movement. In the weeks that followed, Daniel became an unlikely spokesperson for the community. He was invited to speak at neighborhood meetings, offering advice on legal defense, de-escalation, and the importance of standing up against injustice. He also hosted workshops on personal safety and how to protect one's rights in an increasingly volatile world. What had started as a traumatic experience for his family had evolved into something much larger, a community-wide awakening. The scars from that night didn't disappear. Elena still had surgeries to undergo, and Benji's cries were a reminder of the trauma they had all endured. But their home was no longer a place of fear. It had become a fortress of truth, a symbol of resilience. They had not only defended their family, but had set a powerful example for the entire neighborhood. One evening, weeks later, as the family sat on their porch watching the sunset, Mateo, their young son, asked quietly, "Dad, what happened to the bad men?" Daniel paused, thinking for a moment. He looked out at the street, where neighbors were gathering for a cookout. The once divided community was now united, stronger than before. They crossed a line. "Son," he said softly, "and we showed them what happens when you do." The stars twinkled above them, and the peace that had once seemed fragile was now something they knew how to protect together. The fight for their neighborhood wasn't just a victory for the Reyes family. It was a victory for everyone. A victory that reminded them all of the importance of standing up for what was right, no matter the cost.